What's going on, guys? In today's video, we're going to be checking out the new NECA toys, A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. This is Ultimate Freddy Krueger. To figure out how tall Freddy is, let's go ahead and take the tape measure. Freddy Krueger stands approximately 7.5 inches in height. And of course, with this guy being an ultimate figure release, he's going to have a ton of different accessories, all of which we will look at in a second. But first things first, let's have a look at Ultimate Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. One of my personal favorite Nightmare on Elm Streets. Twisted, yes, and slightly off point from really the rest of the series. Freddy's Revenge is something that you either really like or you really dislike. I happen to like this particular movie. Nightmare Ultimate Freddy here does, well, he is a continuation from the Ultimate line, and he was an upgrade from the previously looked at Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 Freddy, which is this one right here. I know what you're thinking. Yes, the head sculpts are completely different. We'll talk about that in a second. But it is the, well, it is an upgraded version to what we originally got here with the regular Freddy. And I did do a re-review of this guy leading up to the point of eventually getting the Ultimate Freddy. At the time that this guy was released, he was still a really good-looking figure. I still think that today. But, of course, one of the biggest problems is he is staction from the waist down. There's nothing you can do with his waist, or really, for that matter, his legs and everything else. From the waist down. He's pretty much staction. But the head sculpts were actually quite good. This is not the same head sculpt as the one right here. However, it is what I can gauge to be this one right here to be the exact same head sculpt as the one that was behind. So let's go ahead. Try not to bang the camera in the process. I'm just going to take the head off. I'm going to replace the head with the correct head so we can do a like for like. There we go. Oh, get the head on there. All right. So here's what we had for the original Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street, the original release. Here is the Ultimate version. It does seem as if, yes, it is the same head sculpt, although I have to admit the one from the Ultimate release seems like it's a little bit thinner than what we got with the original release. I'm sure I'm going crazy, and it probably is the exact same head sculpt, but it does look like it's a tad thinner. Paint obviously is a big step up. This one having a much more reddish tone to the flesh tone versus this one here, which was a much more paler complexion. But other than that, it's the same head sculpt, just a much more upgraded paint scheme. I have been hit or miss when it comes to the Ultimate releases, as I found sometimes the paint was better on the original figure. I feel in this instance, Ultimate Freddy from Nightmare 2 looks a lot better than the original Nightmare Freddy. The shirt is roughly about the same. There is an upgrade to the back. I'll talk about that in a second. So you probably will see a big noticeable hump on the back of the new Freddy versus what we got with the original Freddy. The gloves are not quite the same. Of course, I've gone ahead and, you know what, we're going to do this right. We're going to pop this hand off like that, and we'll replace it with the original glove hand. And we'll kind of just do our comparisons as we go along. So, the original Freddy glove versus the new Freddy glove. The new Freddy glove's got better paint. I do feel like the plastic is a little bit softer on the new Freddy versus the original Freddy that seemed to have a little bit more of a rigid plastic. So if you want a little bit more of a stable Freddy glove, I think this one's the better one to go with, although the paint is far better, far better on the newer Freddy. Of course, both of them would have come with their fedoras. We'll get him to stand. We'll put the pre-standing Freddy next door to him. Their fedoras are exactly the same. This one here actually is the original Freddy. Whoops, and not drop it in the process. Hold on one second. Let me just pick that up, drop it on the floor. What am I doing here? This is the original Freddy. This is the new Freddy. This one actually does feel like it's got a little bit more of a I don't know, just more of a cakey looking paint to it, which I think actually works a little bit better than what we got with the new Freddy. The new Freddy has a very consistent paint across the whole entire hat, where this one does feel like it's a little bit more rustic. Rustic is the best way to describe it, but it definitely does have some more additional layers of paint to it than what we got with the new one. So I might even say that this is the better Freddy hat versus what we got with the Ultimate. Both are, well, this one's a little bit softer of a plastic than this one here, but they are both pliable plastic. And we can go ahead and put those hats onto Freddy, their respected Freddys. Just out of curiosity, for my own curiosity's sake, and take that one off. I'm going to put on the Freddy hat that came with the original Freddy. Yeah, I think I'm kind of digging that Freddy hat just a little bit more. It's got a little bit, just feels like it's just a little bit more old and aged versus the one that we ended up getting. The original Freddy, don't really want to keep going back and forth, but the original Freddy also had the needle fingers. Freddy is slowly taking over Jesse's body. Hilarity ensues. But he does have the spiked fingers as well. New Freddy has spiked fingers. Ooh, yes, but newer Freddy, this might be also an instance where you might want to switch out. Because not only was the paint a little bit better on the original copy, this one here comes across a little bit shinier, a little paler in complexion. But this one here has really bad fingers. They're soft, very soft rubber. The end result is getting it out of packaging. You can see it's extremely warped versus this one here. This one here is still warped, but at least it's got a denser plastic, so it feels as if it's just keeping its shape a little bit better. So you may want to trade that out as well, depending on, you know, if you so wish. That's basically the only thing that the original Freddy had. The fedora, the interchangeable hand, and again, the gloved hands. So, I mean, really, there wasn't a whole heck of a lot. Oh, actually, that's not true. That's not true. And, of course, the original, well, the other Freddy head that had the peeled-away, exposed brain. So those were your options when it came to the original Freddy. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the original Freddy because, really, this is all about Ultimate Freddy. Let's get the fedora that came with him. It just feels... It doesn't necessarily feel right, but it, to be fair, comes with the figure, so we want to make sure that we are using the proper accessories. So this is his one head. He also does come with the same brain exposed head. I guess I should probably do a comparison of that as well. There's the two heads. Not too much different, although there's a little bit more black added to the newer head sculpt. That seems to get a little more of the details to pop versus the original, especially in the mouth. You'll see that big difference there in the mouth. So once again, new Ultimate Freddy, I think, wins for that one. And then one of the other heads that he comes with, too, is this one. This one's kind of neat. I like this one. This one looks like it's the end of the movie, where Lisa confronts now I don't know how you want to describe it, a possessed Jesse, who is now Freddy. I feel like this is like the head sculpt just before he starts melting. Very shiny on the paint, giving it that slick, wet look, which I really quite like. This is also a really good head sculpt, too, that you could favor even going that route as well. So we'll just pop the head off. There we go. It's also got the same peg as the original Freddy. And you can put that one on instead, which gives you that look. I really would have loved if they had given us a melting Freddy head sculpt too. I think that would have also been exceptional to include with the figure. And in case you were wondering what it looks like with the fedora, okay, so maybe it doesn't look as good as this one. But again, you get the options of 3 different head sculpts to go from, so I do like that. Let's talk his other accessories. We looked at his 3 different heads. His very mangled looking, ooh, that's just disastrous, mangled sort of hand. He also comes with these guys, these fellas. The nightmare dogs, in which Lisa confronts on her way to save Jesse. What's so interesting about this is if you watch Never Sleep Again, the gentleman that was working on these dogs, I believe also was working on the Alien Queen, or he was part of the Aliens movie. So he even said, like, I didn't put a lot of time, I didn't really even care about the special effects. Ultimately, though, for what he thinks to be a more laughable looking effect, I always thought the Nightmare dogs looked really cool. They look like they could have the bodies of like a Rottweiler, but have this really deformed looking, almost childlike face. Very mangled. Like here you can see all these little boils and growths all around the dog's face, or human face. This one here has its mouth open. Again, all these little boils and stuff all over it. It looks like it does use the exact same body mold, so nothing is different between that, other than just the different heads. By the way, they have posability, ball joints, and the rest of it is just rubber. There's really nothing you can do. It looks like there's a split right here where you would be able to rotate, but you really ultimately can't. It's pre-posed. It's just a big rubber body. So at least you can rotate the head, even though that's the only thing you can rotate on the Terror dogs, or the Nightmare dogs. And we'll put those right there. And then the last accessory that this particular fellow comes with is this, which is pretty cool. It's the flame effect, ideally in the barbecue scene, where this is attached to Freddy and he says, "You are all my children now." It's a neat effect that NECA has done. Unfortunately, it's not always the most successful. Well, ultimately it is there's a magnet right here. This raised elevation in his torso houses a battery on the inside, not battery, a magnet on the inside. The magnet is supposed to attach, or there's a metal plate, I suppose, the magnet's right there. It's supposed to fit, and it kind of gives you a shape as to how it's supposed to attach to the back. 9 times out of 10, though, it's just by the weight, the fact that the magnet is so far down that it just doesn't seem to hold enough of it against its body, that a lot of times I find that the flame effect either slides off, or if you are putting it, for example, onto Freddy's back, obviously it's going to make him very top heavy as well. So at the beginning of this review, what I ultimately did was I just used a NECA stand, and I could get him to stand. I don't have to worry about him falling over. Ultimately now, while we're doing the review of it, neither the flame nor Freddy has fallen, which is somewhat ironic. I suppose it does stay in place if you don't move it too much, but just a little bit of a wiggle, that flame effect doesn't stay in place. It also doesn't really look, well, it doesn't really necessarily look, if I don't drop the flame, it looks like it's just coming from his shoulders. It probably could have been a little bit wider as well, and maybe run a longer, I think, magnet across its torso. Just grabbing the fire right here. I mean, again, the fire is nicely done. It's kind of a combination. I keep dropping the fire. Hold on 1 second. Yes, as I was trying to say, the fire, I think, could have been a little bit wider. Maybe it could have been about to a here or so and come out, and you could have made the magnet a much larger magnet so it would have held on a little bit better. The shape, and there it goes falling again, the shape works to conform to the shape of his back, but ultimately, though, again, just a little wiggle, that I keep saying battery, that magnet just doesn't want to stay in place. So I do like the effect that NECA has included above and beyond just simply giving us interchangeable heads. You know, the Nightmare dogs are a nice touch. I love this, like the flame attack, the flame fire effect. Don't get me wrong, looks neat, but ultimately just doesn't stay in place. Providing you at least, if you keep it on the figure and don't bang the figure at all, it will stay in place. But again, the moment you take it up, you pick it up and you move it anywhere, that fire just falls right off. Replacing the head back to the original head, his posability is the following. His head rotates all the way around. Also gives you hinge up and down. Ball joint basically is sitting on the interior of the neck. So it's hinging there while it looks like it's just a post attaching itself to his head. Universal joints on the arms, so it allows the arms to hinge outward. You can rotate the arms all the way around. There's a bend at the elbow, which also allows the forearm to rotate. And both hands, both claw and otherwise, hinge back and forth. You can also rotate those around. He has a ball joint on the lower waist area. Legs split out. Forward and back on the legs. Bend at the knee. A rotation on the lower leg. And for foot articulation, the hinge back and forth. You can also rotate the leg or foot portion back and forth. If you're also wondering too, there's just a quick look at his feet and comparing it to the original Freddy's feet. These ones are much more browner in color. These are almost coming across more like a chestnut brown. So the coloring of the feet obviously a little bit different, and the coloring of the pants for that matter as well are different as well. This one has a little bit more of a almost like a lighter gray that's added to the creases, whereas this one's kind of keeping more just to a slightly shinier black. Maybe could have been a little bit more matte in comparison, but definitely is omitting a lot of the grays here. Okay, so for final looks, let's talk negatives. Then we'll move into the positives because there's a lot more positives than there are negatives. Negative strikes to this particular figure is the fact that his interchangeable hand, the one where he's got the blade sticking out of the fingertips, unfortunately uses a softer plastic. As a result, getting it out of packaging, you will notice a very, very obvious distorted or warped blades. You may have to heat those to try to get those back into place, or if you still had the Nightmare on Elm Street Freddy from the original Freddy Nightmare 2, you could just swap those hands out if that's that specific hand that you want to use. The other thing is, and I understand that NECA was trying to find a way around it, is the flame attachment. The flame looks cool behind Freddy, yes, but it can be a nightmare, no pun intended, to get it to stay in place. It's just not as big of a magnet as I was hoping, and getting it to stay sometimes cannot be the easiest things to accomplish. It can be very problematic. Moving the figure, as you probably saw during the course of this review, the flame will fall off repeatedly. Okay, let's talk positives. The positives end of this is the fact that the Ultimate Freddy comes with not only the two heads that we got before with Freddy, but we also get the third head, which is what I can kind of describe as the kind of pre-melted head. I think that's a nice touch to be included. I would have loved also a fourth head where Freddy's face is really starting to melt right off. I think that would have been a fun effect. The Nightmare Dogs also are the icing on the cake. I love the fact that they would have included these as well. They use the exact same mold. That's not really a big deal because the faces are different from one another, so they do look unique to one another. And then again, the flame attachments. As much as I nitpick the fact that the flames are something that just don't stay well on this figure, it is awesome the fact that you can include those with the Ultimate Freddy. So if you want to display him, providing you don't move the figure all that much and you don't bang the figure, the flames look like they should stay in place. You pick it up, it probably will fall off, which will involve you then having to go back and put the flames back on them. At least they're magnets. They're not something that's going to have to plug in place. And if, at the very least, it's not something that was permanently molded or pegged, glued into the back of the figure, which would have been a nightmare. Again, no pun intended, because then you wouldn't maybe always want to have flames jetting out from the back of Freddy's torso. So there's your negatives. There's your positives. Having owned the original Freddy Krueger from Nightmare 2, I think this is a step up. Personally, the paint is better, the head sculpts and the additional accessories are a lot better, and I do think that they really went above and beyond just simply giving us a repack with new articulated legs, which is ultimately sometimes what ends up happening with the Ultimate line. You may get one or two different accessories, but then really the sell for it is the fact that you get the articulation in the legs. Here, Freddy, I feel like I'm getting my money's worth by getting enough accessories, and even though the flames can be a problem just to stay in place, at the end of the day, I'm happier that they are included than if they had not been included. You can find currently Freddy Krueger over at retail stores. You can also find him at your local comic book stores. Nightmare Freddy from Part 2 is now in stock in stores. So if you guys are interested in picking this up for yourself, you should be able to find him fairly easy. I had to wait a little bit longer because I'm in Canada. So my comic book store literally just stocked this guy. I picked this guy up about 2 days ago. I think he came in stock maybe 3 days ago, and I was able to pick him up right away, although I had to wait a little bit longer. So I'm a little apologetic here that you guys had to wait as long as you did for this review. Today, nonetheless, though, we were having a look at the NECA Toys on Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. This was Ultimate Freddy Krueger. If you guys also would like to go back and have a look at some of the other Freddy Krueger figure reviews that I've done, feel free to check out my NECA Freddy Krueger figure reviews. If you also haven't had a chance to hit that little subscribe button down below, make sure you do so. Of course, more videos will be coming your way. Thanks for watching as you always do. I'll see you guys next time.